The psychedelic revolution is here. If you want to integrate your visionary experiences into your purpose, get clear on your entrepreneurial path, and help people while you do what you love, then this podcast is for you. Welcome to The Psychedelic Entrepreneur, Medicine for These Times. I'm your host, Beth Weinstein. I'm a spiritual business coach, 3-time entrepreneur, and a lifelong student of psychedelics and sacred plant medicines. You carry your own unique medicine, and your medicine is what we need for these times. This podcast will help you to share your medicine so you can create transformation in the world. Listen in on conversations with psychedelic leaders, changemakers, and conscious entrepreneurs who are living proof that a better world is possible when you follow your heart and live in alignment with your soul. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Medicine for These Times. I'm so honored to have Sylvia Solit with us here today. Hi, Sylvia. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I love it. You made a joke about getting on the shaman hat, and I said, oh, yeah, I even have my shaman shawl, and then, of course, the whole look. It's so funny because I love to make fun of myself so many times, but this is my I don't wash my hair look. Which I usually do wash my hair, but today was one of those days where it's been back to back. So
yes, I'm also having one of those I didn't wash my hair days, but you're seeing the actual
good
unwashed hair.
Yours looks good. Mine does but yeah, it's hilarious to make fun of ourselves on so many levels. This weekend it actually came up so many times that it's just a thing, right? Have the look but typically I'm just wearing leggings and tank tops like most people all the time.
Yeah, like most people all the time.
Like New York and Miami, right? But yeah, Sylvia, let's hear about your journey. I always love to know, what brought you to where you're at now? How did you get started on the path of awakening that you're on, and also the career path that you're on now and what you used to do? I love sharing those kind of transformational stories of what people used to do and what got them to where they're at.
I would start by saying that if you had asked my 18-year-old self, is this what your life is going to look like? Is this what you're going to end up doing? I would have been like, you are absolutely nuts. So there's no way. I didn't have any of these visions when I was younger. I thought I would have really, in many ways, like a very traditional life. And that stopped the moment I accidentally took a heroic dose of mushrooms. So I was a freshman in college, and somebody who knew how to actually pick fresh mushrooms went and picked a bunch of them himself and brought them back to our friend group. And we were all freshmen, and we were going to go to like a college party as big bag of mushrooms. We didn't have any guidance. There's definitely no facilitator. We didn't even really have any guidance on dosage. I'm talking zero understanding of what we were doing. And I ate a bunch of these mushrooms, and then I walked to the party, and I didn't realize that I'd probably taken a heroic dose. And the moment that I realized it was when I peed in my pants straight through my jeans as we were walking to the party, because I had this download that we should be more free in our bodies. So I was like, maybe not that free, but so I was in a super, super expanded state. And then I end up at this party. And as soon as I got there, I had the direct experience that our thoughts create our reality. I could see it happening in real time. I would think something and it would immediately happen in the 3D. And it was over and over and over again. I kept getting confirmation that your thoughts are actually what create reality. Having had no background for that, I think today people have more context for a download like that, because all you have to do is open up Instagram. You're going to find all kinds of content around conscious manifestation and the power of your mind. I didn't have any of that context, but it was palpable and it was real. And then on the tail end of that was just this overwhelming, crushing force of infinity, which I would call today the mystery or divine spirit. But in that moment, it felt like infinity was crushing the egoic structure of what was essentially a teenage girl. And it blew me to smithereens. finally ended up kind of like crawling back to my dorm room and crawling underneath my blanket and pulling the blanket over my head and just praying that it would stop, which it did the next morning. And then I went to our local bookstore and I went to a section that I would never have gone to before because I was a serious person. I was an environmentalist. I was a radical feminist. I was definitely not interested in spiritual people at all. I thought people that meditated were, losers, people that, that like they had too much time on their hands was kind of the way I would look at a spiritual person. So I got Zen Mind Beginner's Mind off the shelf and I started reading that and I started to have a practice of meditation. And that's really where I would say the path started for me. It was accidental in many ways, but once it started, I couldn't put the genie back in the bottle. And in the beginning I really wanted to. I wanted to just go back to being normal. I don't know how many of our listeners can relate to that feeling, but if you've had a taste of awakening, sometimes it's very natural that right next to that you're like, oh fuck, like I didn't mean to do that, like I want to go back to being asleep, but I couldn't. And then, as is true for many people on the path just continued to unfold, where then I would meet the right teachers, the right facilitators, the right shamans, the right guides. And that continued for about 10 years. I actually moved to South America and I helped to co-found a school which is called the Oasis Institute, which was essentially like a sister school to the Esalen Institute in Big Sur. And at this time, it was in Argentina. It still is there today. There weren't a lot of modern forms of healing in Argentina yet. People were still doing Freudian psychoanalysis. It was very old school. And so we were bringing, things like Gestalt therapy or Rolfing or holotropic breath work. And it was so brand new and it kind of caught fire. And we started to train a lot of people in lots of alternative modalities of healing. And as a result, I got trained in tons of modalities of healing. And I was working as a healer during those years of my life. And I did that until I sold my part in the school and I moved back to the US. And then that's when I pivoted to finance, was after I had sold my part at the school.
I love it. And was that in Buenos Aires or?
The school's in Buenos Aires. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. If anyone ever goes to Buenos Aires, you can still find body workers and therapists who are trained from the Oasis Institute. And there.
Wow.
Check
So
it out.
cool. So beautiful. And then let's hear about, so this is where I love it because, I like a lot of people listening came from kind of a traditional corporate background and went into tech startups and then entrepreneurship. What was this pivot into finance and how did you navigate? And, by the way, for anyone listening, there's nothing wrong with being in finance. I was in corporate and I was still on a pretty deep spiritual path and working with medicines, but, how did that come to terms with this life of, kind of, you came from this alternative medicine type path or alternative healing and then went into finance? Like what was the finance work you were doing and how did that fit in?
Around the time that I left Argentina, I decided to do a sabbatical in India, and I went to the ashram of Ramana Maharshi, which is an incredible place to do a pilgrimage. It's at the base of a mountain, which is called Arunachal. It's a Shiva mountain, so it's this tremendous site of pilgrimage. It's been a Hindu pilgrimage site for literally thousands of years. It's a very potent place to do spiritual practice, and I lived there for some months. And I was deep in a meditation practice. And a lot of the question that I was asking inside the practice was, what am I supposed to do next? Like, do I, continue as a healer? Or should I do a different kind of certification? What's the path ahead? And I had a really profound awakening when I was in India at that time. And in many ways, it was awakening of the divine feminine consciousness. It was so powerful that like I literally felt Kali kind of, I sort of like, there was no differentiation between me and Kali. It was like Kali was like sort of living inside me for a second. And it was so powerful that in some ways, I thought this was like it. I was just going to live in India for the rest of my life. And like, I was good. I'm like, fine, like I'm done here. But then that began to sort of integrate into my nervous system and it began to become more embodied. And in that process of embodiment, I started to get these downloads, and the downloads were along the lines of that we can't afford to live in a time anymore where the feminine and the healers are in one side of the room not being compensated, not being paid, not being rewarded for their work, and in some ways being sidelined and ignored. And over here are the wealth holders and the ones with the power, and that time needs to come to an end. And I thought, what would it look like if I tried to be one of the people that could bridge those worlds together? So I went and I got a job. As my first job was as a financial advisor in a bank. They had a program that trained entrepreneurs to become financial advisors. So I did that. It was primarily a sales job. And then I just sort of tried to work my way through getting trained in finance until I got my CFA charter and um, learned to manage investments in the family office world, because the family office world is inherently a world where you don't have to sell product to anybody.
What an interesting path. That's amazing. And then thank you for sharing. And then at what point, like, are you still doing the financial work now? And because I know we'll talk about what you're up to now, including an upcoming book. But yeah, was there another transition, or what's going on now with that?
Well, there's so much going on with that. I do still work in both worlds. I feel like I'm going to do that probably till the day I die. There's just so much more work to be done. There are so many more bridges to be built. There's still so much um, like distrust of anyone in the financial world who would talk spiritually. And then in the spiritual world, you still have so many people that really don't know how to make a living healing the planet. And so my work's not done yet, as far as I can tell. So I'm continuing to live in both worlds.
I actually really love this because I went like this because I'm like, oh yeah, I've been dealing with this with clients since day one, and even friends and community members. I feel like it's getting better, but for so long it was like, how do we serve and be spiritual and also make a living, and actually, not just make a living, but be okay being wealthy. People don't like to hear this. I'm sure someone's listening right now. It's like, what? That bothers me. It's not about the money. And I always say, look, it's not about the money, but at the same time, I do believe right now we can't bypass what's going on in the world, and this world requires money. And if you want to train in more modalities or go on a retreat or go travel to India and take a few months off to go, study with a guru or something, it usually does take a certain amount of money. I mean, maybe you don't have to have that much, but there's a reality to buying a plane ticket, right? And people are like, oh, but I can get there. And, it's like, and it's funny because it's been a big part of my path as well, is to try to change that conversation. And I've had to do some pretty deep shadow work with my clients around the limitations and the beliefs and the stories around money, and to be welcoming it in. And I will say this, I've had numerous people ask me over the years, do you know a financial advisor who's on a similar spiritual path? Because there are groups of people out there that want to work with someone who's gets it, who's like in the 3D world, but also gets like a certain level of the values that we carry. So I love that you're doing both. Yeah.
There's really two kind of touch points in what you just said. The first is how spiritual people look at money. I even hate saying that. It's like, what does it even mean to be? We have to get rid of even that language. Like, there should be no spiritual people anywhere. There should just be good humans that are embodied and have right relationship to sex, right relationship to money, right relationship to power. And so we're just talking about right relationship, and what right relationship looks like is such an intimate prayer inside of you. So when we feel like money is this sort of like contaminated or dirty energy, we're putting that story on top of the money itself, and it's not necessary. At the same time, we also don't want to idolize money and hoard it. And the prayer that I think is very useful to work with to find right relationship in our own energetic frequency with money is the prayer of enough. And I speak about this a lot because we seem to be living in a time when that word enough, nobody even knows what it means anymore. I got really curious working with people of tremendous wealth, and I remember at one point, so many people would say, oh, if I had $10 million, I would never worry about money again. And then they get $10 million and they're still worried about money. And then they get 100 million, they're still worried about money. And I've even met billionaires that are worried about money. So the number has nothing to do with this frequency of enough. Enough is a very close and delicate conversation between you and the great mystery. And that conversation is for you to discover, what does enough really truly feel like? And in my own life, what I realize is enough feels like sitting in my garden and appreciating the nature around me. Enough feels like being grateful for this dinner that I'm eating with my son because he's going to leave for college soon. Like it's that enoughness is so connected to the field of gratitude and appreciation. And I believe that the frequency of enough is actually the core component of an abundant mindset.
So well said.
So that's like on the personal side. So like just to work with that in yourself is so powerful. So I hope everyone will work with that prayer inside themselves. What does enough feel like in my system energetically? And what does enough feel like in my cells? What does enough feel like in my soul? And don't chase anything until you know what enough feels like. Because it's just going to mess you up. Whatever you're chasing is going to mess you up. If you move from enoughness, you're going to make better decisions about what you're going after.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. This is so well said. And it's something that I've explored as well, is because I went through that myself. I was after like a certain goal to be able to prove that I actually, it was a deeper wounding, right? It was like, oh, let me prove that I'm actually capable of doing this. And it was my dead father's voice in my head for 20 years, which is crazy. It's programming. It's around like, oh, my dad thought I was crazy to be an entrepreneur. He wanted me to just kind of stay in this corporate job that I hated and, suck it up and be miserable the rest of my life. That was the programming I was taught. And so when I moved into entrepreneurship, it was very challenging because there was a lot of guilt. It was a lot of like, well, wait a second, I'm going after happiness now. And it was never about the money, but then, on some deeper wounding level, I needed to prove to my dead father that I could do this, And so I went on a mission to earn a certain amount and make it in a certain way. And then once I did, I was like, oh, okay. I could keep going and try to keep going after more. But then it was like the realization of how I was really operating from the wrong place. And I actually see that so much because, yeah, I'm friends with some people who are in those multi-millions and even billion level, and it just never seems to end. And I do believe in mission, like if you're driven to, make an impact and have a mission, and then where's the point where you're just actually avoiding something else? Or there's a deep programming that there's something, and again, this is where it's like the unconscious realm. Is it something in your program to prove to, a parent or prove to yourself that you're worthy, or you hit the, 100 million and then it's like you keep going and it's, yeah. And how much of this is really rooted in trying to help versus a wounding? And that's what I'm always curious about, is like, how many of these people out there are actually operating from like a deep scarcity, even though they have like more than enough?
Most everybody, most everyone. And so like this work around money like I said, it's very delicate and there's different facets to it. Another facet that I like to bring my own personal attention to is like work is sacred and holy. So one element of becoming a right relationship to money is to heal your relationship to work itself. Like we are actually here to work. Period. Like you got a human body and a human lifetime because you're in Earth School, and part of what you do in Earth School is you work. Why do you? Because if you weren't working, you would just be a parasite. Like we're here to contribute, we're here to work. So I think like one of the first questions I ask, especially like women when they come to me say, oh, I really want to create a lot more abundance in my life. Say, well, do you like to work? And if the answer is no, I actually hate work. That's one piece that is available for some healing and for some alignment. So like, what does it actually mean to return to the love of work itself? And then if you love working, then there's also this shift. Then it's really important that we're not working for money, we're working for love. We love work, we're working for what we love, we're creating what we love. That's an important piece to figure out in a human lifetime. And that in and of itself brings so much of the energetics of money into alignment in your life.
Yeah, I love it. And that's one thing I've been talking about for years is to separate out money from work, which by the way, if we stop and think about it, work does not equal money. I think here in the US and maybe the whole Western world, we've been programmed to believe that the two are connected. And as one of my old teachers said, it's like, well, if hard work or work in general equaled money, then why is it that the nurses and the teachers aren't making the multiple billions? They're
Yeah.
working, they're showing up, 7 days a week. And then, entrepreneurs, I only work four days a week, it's like, why is it then so uneven? And it's so that's where it's like just breaking down the programming around work. And I know in like my generation that was raised by my parents' generation, that was like, just you must work to survive. It was like such deep scarcity, even though we were kind of okay out there. Like I think everybody in the last, on a certain level, even like here in the Western world, even if you're at the poorest of poor, like you still have most of your basic needs met. This is very different than maybe some people in other parts of the world. And it's just so interesting how there's been this deep programming and, like even the whole, system of capitalism and how it's like, as a country, it's like, oh, we must increase this GDP. We must keep producing. We must keep growing. And it's like, at what expense? People are getting burnout, tired, unfulfilled. And like you said, like there's a lot of people out there that don't like working because there's no connection.
Yeah, there's no soul at all in their work. Now, I do want to just point out, because I think about this a lot, is there are some systemic issues around work that are very difficult for one individual to solve. So going back to the example of the healers, like why do we pay like business people so much money for the value that they add to society, but there are healers out there that are literally saving people's souls and like at the deepest level are providing so much value, and they're barely getting by. So that's a systemic issue, and we're not there yet as a society. There, that balance doesn't exist by and large yet. But again, that's why I feel like it still is like my sacred responsibility is to try to create these bridges as much as possible.
And it's so interesting because you're totally naming the truth. And I keep wondering if there's this day, which I don't know, maybe we'll see it in the next few years, where the tables are turned and people are like, I actually wrote about this, I think in like 2018, I wrote an email to my list about how all my healers were just getting so booked up. And some of them are so far booked up now that I can't even get an appointment. And I do believe that there might be this day where they are actually like, like the old, the tech gurus or used to be like the finance bros, like I lived in New York City for so long and it was like, who do we put up on the pedestal? Oh, guys that worked at hedge funds and, founders of tech companies. And it's like, well, actually these times that we're going into, it might be the healers, the healers are the
And I
ones.
think
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think AI will facilitate that to some extent, especially when it comes to the world of wealth management. So part of what I see happening in wealth management is that AI and technology generally is going to take over so many of the roles of what a portfolio manager was doing in the past. Because when it comes to like who can, like what's going to pick a stock, what's going to place a trade, what's going to do like analysis of even a public company, what's going to rebalance your portfolio, all of that is going to be so well done with AI and automation. So you're looking at an industry that's going to go through this huge, huge shift in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years. And there's going to be tremendous fee compression also because people are going to feel more sovereign and more enabled to be able to manage their own portfolios. and they don't need to pay the advisor the way that they used to pay an advisor. So you're going to see an incredible amount of um, resources that need to reallocate, human resources. And I truly think that it's the people that can coach us around our relationship to the money, who can have the conversations around how we make our decisions, what's the place of consciousness these decisions are being made from, that those people are going to be more meaningful in terms of how we manage our wealth than the person who tells you what stock to buy. Like, those times are pretty much over.
You were
So we could
saying,
see
I
financial
love this.
healers could be rising.
I love this because I've been getting downloads about kind of similar, but not to that detail about, by the way, that's really interesting. You're right. It's like, wow, there's another one. There's another one that I could maybe do myself. Not now, maybe in a few years. But I've been getting similar downloads over the last few years about how we must shift into abundance consciousness as a society. Because, the systemic problems, like you mentioned, I mean, there's so many, and they're all kind of pointing to the same place. And, as much as people are like, oh, it needs to crumble, it's like, well, I don't think any one of us is going to fix it. I think it has to be a shift in the consciousness. And it does have to be about that. It's like, how do we even see money? The level of wounding and trauma that's in the collective around money and scarcity. It's like, I say it's always it's like sexuality, sex, and then money, and then I don't know, and then you could throw in some death. And it's like, what are people afraid to even talk about? Money. It's amazing how many people like freeze up. I mean, I know because I went through this myself. And to see it differently, have a different relationship with it, a different relationship with being like really knowing that you're taken care of here on earth, like on such a deep level. Yeah, like the true abundance, right?
That's it. That's it.
Water.
You nailed it. Yeah, exactly. No, that's it. Like, that's it. That's the key. When you look even at the development of like cryptocurrencies and digital assets, I've had some deep visions that have come to me around why that's happening on the planet right now. And there's a lot of speculation in digital currencies. That's because our consciousness is still speculative. We are still in this sort of like, I want to get rich quick. So you have a lot of market forces of people trying to get rich quick using digital assets. So that's what's creating all this volatility, and in some ways can be, you could even say slight uninvestability of the space because of how volatile it is. However, what is being built is the framework for distributed economies. And this I'm 100% certain on. I don't know the timeline on this, but we are going to see global distributed economies that have more access points. There's, you're looking at economies where, somebody who's living in Kenya can have an onboarding and an access into that economy through these digital assets. And I think that in the future, you're going to see more abundance and more access to that abundance across larger groups of people because of what's being built right now. We're just not there yet.
This is a good one, by the way. I love this. I love these topics. I think it was in 2016, because I had known about blockchain and cryptocurrency, kind of when I think maybe on the earlier side, but, not like really early. And I read this PDF that explained all about how it worked. And I read it on the way into the jungle to do a dieta. And I was just like blown away about the potential. Like, wow, this has a potential to change our entire world on so many levels. And I think we're getting there. And like you said, it's like, yeah, it's a little early because maybe there's not the consciousness because we're so kind of tied into the old ways, but there's so many really beautiful potentials for what could happen. We'll see. I'm curious, any other visions about this? Because I wonder if it's anything similar or anything
around digital assets in particular, or AI.
Either one, yeah. Like, because I actually love this subject, by the way, talking about the future of money and abundance, and the world that we're entering into and where it might go. I've had a few discussions on this podcast and some other podcasts because it's interesting, right? It's like we could see a different world. It's a better world. And there's a lot of fear in the narrative right now around like, oh, AI is just going to take all our jobs and bomb us. And yeah, there's probably some, like anything, there's a shadow side. But yeah, anything interesting, anything else that's interesting that's come through that you think might be worth sharing?
Well, this isn't from vision per se. This is just from me observing the markets, but you're seeing a lot of companies are starting to put parts of their reserves into cryptocurrencies. And that's something because this administration is very favorable to cryptocurrencies. And so that kind of a shift is what I would sort of say becomes like a forever shift because these are balance sheet assets now. These are not, 19-year-old traders that are up all night seeing if, their Ethereum went up 10%. So I think you're starting to see significant institutional level shifts where there's more adoption of different kinds of digital assets. And I don't think we're going to go back. I mean, I think that's a forever shift. And I don't know what will be sort of the prevailing paradigm, but neither did anyone in the early days of the internet,
Isn't that weird?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're kind of in that same phase. But in terms of how it's going to impact us as a human race, this sort of democratization of opportunity is happening concurrently at the same time when you say people are going to lose our jobs, so we're going to lose jobs that maybe we didn't even need to have to begin with. Like, we could have and one of the things I'll say too is like I love that people that are more taking to AI and are more native and more fluent and working with it more aggressively usually tend to be very creative types. I think it's actually a very feminine technology once you begin to interface with it deeply. So I started to work with more than one large language model to compare them. And to the first one, I gave the instructions from the very first prompt. My very first prompt was, okay, here's the deal. I am a student of non-duality. I love Eckhart Tolle. I don't believe in victim consciousness. I think everything happens for a reason. My life has a design. And I want you to always filter everything that you say to me. I want you to remember and filter it through this operating system. This is my operating system. So I'm training the AI of how I want it to interface with me. And then to the other system, I gave a different prompt, because I want to begin to compare how they work with me.
The one that's
The other
better,
one
you
was
think? Yeah.
the other one was a creative prompt. It was more because I like to write, so it was more about like writing styles, writers that I like, who I am creatively, like who inspires me with music. So I gave it a lot of creative input about me.
Amazing. It's funny. I was just talking about this with a client. Yeah, because I've used it and I've tried to train it, but then I don't know. I always end up going back and rewriting a lot of it anyways because it's like it's not 100% me yet. I think there's maybe a day that'll get there, but I've never actually used it for long form writing, like a book or anything either, which is
You really
you
can't
have to.
because you don't you can't
No.
you can't like if I run I'm gonna in June if I believe if I run it through one of these systems, it can use my writing to train itself, and I don't want my writing to be used as training grounds for AI right now. It's not even published yet, so I wouldn't run a book through. I wouldn't run a book through AI personally.
I know I have a client who wants to write a book, and I was like, just write it now before AI writes all the books. I mean, which I don't think is going to be, I'm not actually worried about that because I think what I keep saying is going to happen is I think, yes, there are already books being written by AI before. Now, probably more. And I think this is actually going to create more innovation and more people like the real good voices and the uniqueness of human beings is going to come out even more. Because no one's going to want to read a book that's written by an AI where it's obviously AI and there's nothing really landing in the soul. But I'm always curious, like how many people are just churning out quick books with AI right now? I don't know.
Oh, tons. Or just even on social media, you don't even have to create your own social media videos. You can literally have your face made into an avatar, and then you could just feed it scripts, and it's going to create every single video out of a script.
Yeah.
So, look, these are wild times, and I don't know what it will look like in 5 to 10 years, but I always bet on humanity. Like, I think there's something really special about the human form. There's we're so adorable. We're messy. We're imperfect. Like we fuck up all the time, but like we also have this capacity to learn love in a way, and the language of love in a way that seems very uniquely human. Our creativity, our ability from everything from using a tool to writing a love poem. Like we have such a creative gift as a human species. So as we become more enmeshed into this sort of technological innovation of AI, I think that we don't need to be afraid of it. What we need to do is to keep using it in ways that expand what you understand yourself to be as a human. Like, what does it mean to you to be human? And let these tools help you to deepen and grow in your humanity. I don't think, I also like to, I did have one vision recently, actually, that was like, we're not going to have Republican and Democrat in the future. We're going to have like, tech versus organic, or like, awakened versus unawakened. It's going to be much more about what does it mean to be human in this world, and what are our core belief systems around humanity? What are our core belief systems around what it means to be have agency as a human, free speech as a human, civil rights as a human? We're going to enter a time when like this sense of the importance of the human is becoming more and more critical. I think that's why a lot of people feel upset or disturbed or shook up by what's happening politically in the country, is because they're asking themselves, where do I as a human fit in here? And is my humanity going to be valued and respected and honored?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what's been coming through me as well. Is it's gonna, my friend, my friend started saying this a few years ago. 100% organic human, like, or it's gonna be a thing. And I've looked at even the industry I'm in, the coaching world jumped on AI, and I was like, oh well, go ahead, because it'll probably mean great business for me if everyone's using AI, and I'm one of the only people that's really still kind of just coming out there with my own voice and my own like real writing and real videos. And I mean, of course it's not going to be, I'm not the only one, but I feel like I don't connect with anybody who's writing it, and I can usually tell, I can feel it, and maybe it'll get better, but there's something, it's, when we're energetically sensitive, we feel if there's a heart in it or not, or we feel if it's
Mhm.
just churned through and it's like kind of generic, kind of a generic post that doesn't really have any depth to it. But we'll see. This is also why we're making real videos with real people, and which I do know what you
Oh.
were saying, that we can make these kind of fake AI videos, but I don't know. It's like we need real humans.
All right, guys, these are two real humans. This is not AI generated. I love to listen to the poetry of David White because he's such a extraordinarily creative, unique human voice. And, we need David Whites. We don't need a bunch of AI that can sound like David White.
Yep.
There's a difference, and that difference is what it is to be human. That in a nutshell is what it is to be human.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's going to be a huge explosion. It's kind of like the healers and the artists, the musicians, the singers. It's like in the world that I live in, it's already happening. But I think it's going to finally get to that place where it's like, oh, yeah, you're I don't know, like you do chanting, or you lead kirtan, and hey, you're like now extremely well respected and making money, and people are coming to you because it's interactive, it's in person, it's engaging, and it's not just like some generic churn out formula on, an app that doesn't have you actually engaged. So we'll see. It's really fascinating, and I think it's kind of exciting to be alive, and also just wild times. But I want to hear a little bit about, you have a book that's coming out. Are you allowed to talk about it yet? Yeah, a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, of
Great.
course, of course. So I wrote a book that is based somewhat on some of my life stories, but also the life stories of some people that I've worked with in my healing practice. And every chapter is something that we're typically terrified of as a human. So the things that we wish would never happen to us. It's cancer, bankruptcy, litigation, divorce, heartbreak. Um, and the premise of the book was, what if you could take every single thing that you're terrified of, you wish would never happen to you, and you could vanquish the fear of it because you would understand that every single thing that happens to us is a profoundly beautiful curriculum for our awakening, and that we're here to wake up. That's the purpose of a human lifetime. And so if you find yourself being confronted with one of these situations, or you find yourself confronted with a really difficult person, it's the tools to how to reframe that into your own personal curriculum for awakening, and how to take that awakening all the way home, like fully, like don't leave, like no stone unturned, get all the way through it until you've discovered the kernel of truth that was waiting for you inside of that tragedy.
Great. Wow, this is
Yeah.
beautiful. I'm curious, yeah, and I want to dive into that a little bit more. But what prompted you to even want to write this book? Like what was happening for you? Because you're financial advisor and you're, like you don't need to, but was it just kind of living in you and you had to?
Yeah, it was like a phase of my work, I would say. So for about 10 years, I was studying with an indigenous tribe in South America, and they were like the spiritual gangsters, like a very like deep, like super intense Yahe tribe. And our work was so incredibly intense. These are ceremonies where you would see people get tied up because they couldn't find themselves in time and space anymore. So it was like very intense work. And in that training, I really became adept at working with the shadow with people. And I think that then that brought to me a lot of people that needed assistance with some really dark shadow work. And sometimes I would see things that were just really heartbreaking aspects of what a human can go through. You're looking at people that were abducted as a child and kidnapped, or um, a lot of sexual trauma. Sexual trauma tends to be very very difficult thing for people to work through, but very necessary to find the ways to work through that. So I was seeing people that were coming, and they, I was seeing, as I almost like I had like a curriculum of darkness kind of handed to me. And not just in the people that I was working with, but even in my own life, I ended up having an investor file a litigation, not just against me, but against myself, business partner, and another firm. But I was named in it, so I had to confront a litigation personally. So like that was one of my dark nights of the soul. Is like, how do you work through something that's that painful? And that's really where the genesis of the book came from, was that I was living it in my own practice and in my own life. And I really pushed myself to try to see it, like whatever I saw during the period that I was writing the book, no matter how hard it was, I would challenge myself to bring it into the book and work through it. And one of my friends was like, well, like what are some of the things like you're super still afraid of, but you haven't confronted in your life? And I was joking with her, and I was like, I hate cockroaches. I think they're disgusting. I live in Miami. If I see a cockroach, I freak out. I can't touch it. She's like, well, it sounds to me like you need to eat a cockroach. And I was like, there's no way I'm eating a cockroach. I was like, if I was ever on one of those reality shows where you had to do like all the things and then they give you the bugs, I'm like, I'm out, not eating the bug. And she's like, well, I mean, what, you're going to give other people the advice to face their fears, but you're not willing to eat a cockroach? And so I did. I ate a cockroach for my book. It was this very specially prepared cockroach. It was grown by a farmer and it was desiccated, but I ate it. And part of it was like, how do we become resilient, strong, ferocious, fearless warriors of this human lifetime? Well, it's by exercising that muscle of turning and facing directly what you're most afraid of. And so that's what we do with the shadow. Is we don't run from the shadow, we don't bypass the shadow, we turn and we face it directly in the eyes and say, hey, what you got for me? Hi, have a seat. Let's hang out for a while. So that was the genesis of the book. And what was magical was that I finished writing it this summer. And as soon as I finished writing it, all of that way of working and all of those sort of techniques per se, all of a sudden were gone for me. It's like I open sourced them, and it was like if I did them, then all of a sudden it would be like theater of my own self. It was the craziest things. Like every technique that I had transmitted in the book emptied from me, and I had to start over again. Just super interesting process. Yeah. Yeah.
Start the whole process over again.
I had to learn to sit with people in a different way. Like
You
that
move
that way
beyond
was
it. Yeah.
it was just, it's almost like maybe in some ways, maybe 10 years from now I'll write a book on the next way. And it's just, maybe it's like a developing curriculum of how to wake up in this lifetime. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just a few months into it.
Wow. Very fascinating. And I would not eat a cockroach, sorry. Um I'm like, I guess that's one of my shadows. I'm not deathly afraid of cockroaches, but I've been presented with that option to eat bugs, and yeah, there's no real reason I think I would need to. But to like sit with one on me, maybe. Like I actually had one in my bed in Costa Rica 2 years ago, and it was like my nervous system was on high alert for about 2 weeks straight there. I couldn't even sleep, and that was like, wow. And I was going through so much. I was actually in a dark night when that happened too. And it was like, what the fuck? Like so much
Yeah,
stuff coming up at
exactly.
once. But I'm so glad you wrote this book. Of course, being in the psychedelic space and kind of the world that I'm in, and we've talked about shadow work a lot on this podcast, but I do believe it's the great medicine. I have never been averse to it because I think it just is. I'm one of those people where it's like, oh, I always saw that life would change exponentially when I went and did that work, or when something would happen for me, to me, that we would call an initiation or dark night. And after you've been through enough, you know that it's okay, and there's something for you and for your soul's expansion in it. But so many people are afraid, and it's like it has this bad rap where it's like, oh, it has to be so hard. And it's kind of like and we talked about this a little off camera. Yeah, it's hard, but then there's this beauty of resilience, and to know that we can choose a story, and there's the victim consciousness and then the resilience and the freedom. And I guess, I'm curious, like, how much do you mention or talk about that? Like, that so much of our world is actually designed to numb people, to keep people distracted from actually feeling the depths of these hard, shadowy aspects of themselves and their lives. That it's much easier to go drink alcohol or shop online, or scroll on TikTok or whatever people are doing. And how
Hmm.
much, like, how resilient are humans, and yeah.
Super resilient. Like humans are awesome. I mean, we're the best. It's that muscle is a spiritual muscle essentially. It's like going to a gym, but it's like going to a spiritual gym. And so if you can actually really learn to exercise that muscle and continually face that which you feel uncomfortable facing, or even just learning to be inside of discomfort and not moving, anything that we can be completely still and present with begins to alchemize. And one of my favorite sort of 3-step quick alchemization processes is just bringing yourself into heart mind coherence. So you just slow the breath down, hand on the heart to bring your awareness to the 40,000 neurons in the heart, and then practicing a few moments of gratitude, which brings you into this deepest heart mind coherence. And then from a coherent state, look at the thing that you're afraid of. And watch how the power of your light just diminishes the shadow. And that's how you build that kind of spiritual resilience. And suffering is one of the primary portals to awakening, but it is not the only portal to awakening. And there is a moment when you have alchemized enough of your personal suffering where you begin to alchemize even things just for the planet or for the tribe, and you're beginning to serve through joy and not through personal suffering. That's the plan. That's the
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah, or at least like the last I actually just made a video of it a few days ago, how I came out of a pretty intense initiation. And it really just ended in May. It started winding down in February, but it ended in May, and it was about 2 years straight, and it was really hard. But because I have had the tools and been on this path for a really long time, I was able to just sit in that, like you just said, sit in the discomfort, go through the pain, feel the grief. I mean, I was brought to my knees. It was almost every aspect of my life was just burned into flames. And I knew, and this is the beauty of it, to know like when it's happening, to really be in it fully and feel it fully, but to also be able to remove myself and witness it, and to be in that place of
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, okay, there's a reason why this needs to happen on this, like, because when it happened, it was like, wow, why did this need to go down? That's pretty bad. But it was like, oh, okay, there's something here for me to learn and grow from. And I knew when I was in it what that was. I had an awareness because I had actually prayed on it for many years. And it was like, oh, so to navigate the hardest period of my life and also be aware that, okay, like I'm going to be okay through this, even though maybe I don't want to go out and maybe I'm crying a lot or my heart is hurting and I lost, like, there was a lot of loss. It was like deep grief. But to know that there was something happening for me and my expansion and my soul's journey. And then, of course, it started coming through, and I was able to witness like, oh, that's interesting how that just came through, or that popped up, or this manifested. And to know that you can hold both, that was actually one of the biggest lessons, is to be able to expand that capability to hold like the depths of the dark night and the shadow and the grief and the pain and the suffering, and like the expansion of the beauty and the light and the resilience. And I just, and I guess that's that path of non-duality, to be like, okay, and like love it all actually. And I
Yeah.
see that
Yeah.
as like the freedom, and then I look at others people and I'm like, oh my God, so many people are creating, it's almost like they want to suffer, and how do you explain that? Like, sometimes I can't make sense of what I see out there in the collective, where I'm like, you guys, it's actually not that hard to be free and awaken and have this beautiful life, even if with the depths of how bad things get.
Well, you have practice, which is what you're talking about is alchemy. And so you're talking about modern witchcraft.
Hmm.
And this is the work of the white witch, right? This is the work of the white witch, is to not push things away, to not be afraid, to not try to dodge the bullet, but to actually be completely still in the midst of ammunition, and to not move. And you don't move because you know that all is well with your soul. And I thought about protection for so many years. I was like, what do you, because like I'm in this non-dual framework, like, what are you protecting yourself from? Like, protection from what? And like, how does protection work? And like, it would be so cool. Like, what? Like, why would some people be protected and others not? Like, that seems like lunacy. I said, no, actually, protection is knowing that you are okay. That's the protection. You are okay. You are okay as a soul. It's going to be okay. You're good. You are good. That's the protection. That is, that is what's going to make your spiritual immune system um strong, really strong.
So good. It's funny because I say that a lot. I'm like, what is, because I had a teacher point this out many years ago about protection is just fear. And I'm like, is it? And I think now there's a balance, but when you are so grounded in your sovereign self and your heart and your light, and like you just said, it's like, well, that is the protection.
Yeah.
But then, it's funny because there are so many people that run around like, oh, I must protect my energy and I don't even want to talk to you, or I need to spray
Good.
everything, or I need to carry
Right.
I mean, and I'm
Um,
like, how much of this is like just the mind going crazy and making stories and creating,
s- so I'm like loving this conversation. We had it
funny.
scheduled until
Oh,
5:30,
shoot.
and I have
Do you have
and
to run? Well, we could wrap it
I
up
had
because
a
we're
I had
almost
a
there.
yeah, I had a call at 5:30 and they're already calling me. I'm
Oh,
like, I'm
lost track of
coming.
time. Well, let's wrap it up then. No problem. I want you to take a minute to talk about, well, let's plug your book if we can. And then anything else that you want to share that's coming up for you over the next, few
I
months.
feel like we're just getting started. I feel like we should have another conversation. There's a million things that we didn't touch on. I feel like we're just kind of like getting to know each other. And I just love your energy and your vibe and your work in the world. And you obviously, people are listening to this podcast because it makes them feel good. And that's what we want. We want everyone to feel good. You deserve to be feeling really, really good, no matter what's happening in your life. Even if you're in physical pain, you can find the good inside of any pain and any suffering.
Yeah. And when do you expect the book to come out?
It's coming out in June of 2026. It's going to be published as part of Deepak Chopra's book club. It's called Soul Naked. And if you want to sign up for a newsletter, it's free. You can just go to thesylvia.com, and it's Sylvia with the Y.
Great. Well, I'll be on the lookout for that. Please be in touch. Send me the link. Send me the information when it comes out. Maybe we'll bring you back on when it's released. And congratulations. That's a big deal, being part of Deepak's book club.
Thank you.
How does that even happen before it's published? That's amazing.
He has like a partnership with the publisher.
So good. That's huge.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. What an inspiration. Maybe one of these days I'll write that book that's living inside me.
Please do. The world needs your words. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. It was great to have you. What a great conversation.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you're feeling inspired, I'd appreciate it if you showed your love with a review. And check out my YouTube channel where you can find the video version of this podcast. You can also head to bethaweinstein.com to learn more about me and grab my free business growth trainings. Remember, you carry your own unique medicine, and your medicine is what we need for these times.